Take long for her to slip into one of her daffy word salads again.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy.
Oh, what did that last bit even mean? Joining me is Sean Spicer, the first White House spokesman of President Donald Trump. Sean Spicer, great to see you again. Look, the polls are now showing Kamala Harris actually leading Donald Trump. It's incredible. How much trouble is he in?
Well, look, the biggest obstacle that the Democrats faced was their candidate had an issue with fitness for office. The second that you remove Joe Biden with the equation, frankly, Andrew, anybody would have done better. I mean, that's the reality. They removed the biggest obstacle from so many independents and right-leaning Democrats wanting to support the Democratic nominee. We knew that would happen. You go back the last several elections, it's been tight. The only reason, I mean, I hate to be blunt, that Donald Trump was leading by the amount that he was that debate really showcased for the country and frankly the entire world how concerning Joe Biden's situation was. So they removed it. I don't think that this is a huge endorsement of Kamala Harris. I think it's anybody but Biden. That being said, if I were Trump's campaign, the game has changed and they need to adjust accordingly. They need to understand that the strategy, the tactics, the messaging is very different. But it's the Biden-Harris agenda. She owns the chaos that came out of our financial markets today. She owns the chaos that is happening in the Middle East today. All of these things are a reminder of the policies of the Biden-Harris. And if Donald Trump can focus his message on his record and her record as vice president, he will win. He will pull this out. He's got to avoid the name calling and the nastiness because that's not what the voters in these key states are looking for, right? They want a reason to vote for him, and he's got to give it to them.
Sean, that's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. I mean, you know, his team must be pulling their hair out because you've got the chaos in the Middle East, potentially war with Iran. Biden was soft in Iran. Trump was tough. You've got the big slump in Wall Street as well. Now, I know that's more a market correction than, you know, but maybe signifying something terrible, but it's highlighted terrible economic policies, high inflation, all that kind of stuff. This is her part of her legacy too, and it's the personal. Now, I noticed that Kamala Harris is running away from real scrutiny, as far as I can tell. Not a single interview to a real journalist since she took over the nomination. There's not yet a debate. There's an argument about the debate and what terms there'd be with Donald Trump. What's up with that? Is she doing the Joe Biden strategy, essentially, of hiding in the cellar? Is this their idea that the person who will beat Donald Trump is Donald Trump? So don't expose yourself too much.
Well, yeah, I think there's two parts to the strategy. What you just said, which is, hey, let him go out there and say stuff, right? Because they're excited that I'm not Joe Biden. I mean, it's not that people are fired up about her. They're just like, hey, good, Biden's gone. And secondly, and we saw this the other night on the tarmac with the return of those Americans that were kept in Russian captivity. She, at any opportunity, says just weird stuff, word salads. And that was a moment in which she starts going off unscripted. And so her campaign knows that whether it's interview or just an unscripted moment in front of supporters, that she'll say things that can be used against her. So I think that they have decided to take a strategy that says, for as long as we can get away with it, and I frankly would bet you that she goes all the way to her convention on August 19th without doing a single interview. This goes back to why. Just because, I mean, number one, our press is giving her a pass. And number two is, what do you gain out of it, right? You and I and others look at this and say, this is ridiculous. But if you're her team and the strategy's working, why would you expose yourself to that? And I think that considering the fact that the media here in the United States will give her a pass, why not take it? Is, I think, the strategy that they're employing.
But absolutely, you can complain all you like, but if she's winning with it, keep going, I should imagine, although America will be the loser. Now, all this said, Sean, I just want to go back to the personal, because we've talked about Kamala Harris shape-shifting, right? You know, like she was raised essentially by her Indian mother, went to high school in California, but if you put her in front of a black audience, she talks like she's from the deep black South, you know, with a broad accent. It's really weird. I see that her husband, Doug Emhoff, can do the same sort of thing. Now, he's admitted to CNN now, just last week, that his first marriage broke up after he made their housekeeper pregnant, can you believe? Yet this is the same man who gave lectures on the media on toxic masculinity. Here he is.
This is something I've thought about a lot and something I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity, masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man.
Sean, what do you make of that?
Well, you know, it's stuff like that, plus him inserting himself in the debate on Roe versus Wade. He's got a lot to say. And as they say, don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house. I think he's got to be very careful. But what we've also learned about this instance, and look, I just want to be clear with your audience. I think that personal matters, family matters are generally out of bounds. That being said, when he wants to insert himself, as you played in that clip, in issues that talk about masculinity and women's rights and all this stuff, when he's got a history, that may be a problem. Now, the big story that I also didn't think get a lot of attention is apparently, while Kamala knew about his past, this was never part of the vetting that came out that they disclosed to Team Biden. So it's really interesting how and when this came out. But you can see, I mentioned a moment ago how the media covers for her. Well, apparently they cover for him as well. It sort of came up. He made his comment to CNN, and then it was almost like they all agreed, okay, we will never speak of this again.
I tell you what, it really is. The whole media establishment, bar a few exceptions like Fox News, really pushing for Kamala Harris to be president, not subjecting her to the scrutiny, and she's getting away with it. It's like it'll be a mystery box that you open on election night, and then you'll see what you really get. Sean Spicer, thank you so much for your time.
As always, Andrew, thank you.
After the break, Meghan Markle complains again, plus more ethnic riots in Britain, and this time involving Muslim and Pakistani crowds attacking journalists and white motorists.
I used to be a homicide detective. It was my job to lock people up and put them in here.
You get treated like an animal, you're going to act like one.
I didn't really care what happened to them. Whatever they got inside, I reckon they deserved.
You walk out of the cell, you might not be walking back in that night.
Now I'm going back into a maximum security prison to find out what I was missing.
We thought it was going to be a slaughterhouse.
Join me on my prison journey. Listen to my new podcast, Breaking Badness, with Gary Jubilant. Visit breakingbadness.com.au or search for it on CrimeX Plus, on Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
These terrible communal riots in Britain haven't stopped. But it's not just supposedly far-right anti-immigration protesters now, most white. In reaction to their reaction, people of Muslim appearance and carrying Palestinian flags took over traffic points in Birmingham, for instance, to keep out suspected anti-immigration protesters. A warning, some footage on our show you is distressing. That's a warning. They also bashed whites they thought were protesters. Some carried weapons and menaced television crews reporting the scene.
Community leaders have been speaking to the police as well because...
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
But I think, apologies for the language you're hearing, but a sense of anger, I think you can hear there.
Yeah, Katie, I think Becky, I apologise. We need to leave you there.
One of those thugs even tried to stab the tyres of that Sky UK film crew. An ITV reporter said he also had to run to escape another mob there. Joining me for the Tuesday panel, Will Kingston, host of Fire at Will, it's now called, Fire at Will, a weekly podcast from The Spectator on politics and culture. And Danica DiGiorgio, co-host of Danica and James on Sky News every Sunday at 8 p.m. Will, you are in London. Are these riots, and I've been seeing scenes of armoured cars being attacked with Molotov cocktails in Belfast as well, as far off as that. Are they as bad as they seem just watching out of context clips? And how would you describe them?
I would describe them as entirely predictable, Andrew. What we are witnessing is an elite consensus that has been ruled over by the left and the right breaking down before our very eyes. That elite expect, when they have preached the politics of identity for decades now, and now racial sectarian violence erupts on British streets, when they have said to the masses that we are pursuing a policy of mass migration without any thought given to social cohesion or cultural integration, when they have ignored that there are elements of Islamic culture which are incompatible with a Western liberal democracy, and when they have told you that you are a racist if you dare to bring up any of these points. This was always going to happen, and I fear it will continue happening, Andrew, because the wrong lessons are being learned. Unfortunately, we're hearing about social media disinformation. We're hearing about the far right, whatever that means. We're not having the one conversation that we really do need to have, which is around mass migration and cultural integration and the acknowledgement that multiculturalism has utterly failed in the United Kingdom.
Now, I want to stress that, and I'm absolutely sure you agree, the way their dissatisfaction is being manifested, violence, riots, etc., is totally out of order. It's disgusting. I condemn it in whichever community did it. But the thing is, this is a fire that's feeding off timber that's just been piled up like a funeral pyre around the feet of England. Meanwhile, Danica, the boss of X or Twitter, Elon Musk, he's in a brawl with Britain's Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who I must say is acting like a weak man trying to be strong during this crisis. Starmer tweeted, "We will not tolerate attacks on mosques or on Muslim communities," to which Musk quite reasonably replied, "Shouldn't you be concerned about attacks on all communities?" Isn't Musk right? Hasn't he put a finger on something that's angering the anti-immigration rioters who talk about two-tier policing?
Absolutely, Andrew, because this is what's been bubbling under the surface for so long. This is why the anti-immigration protesters are so angry. And the more that they keep being called racists and bigots, the more that pressure cooker continues to boil. And as we've seen in the last week, it's absolutely exploded. And what we've seen with Keir Starmer's response, as well as the mainstream media in the UK, is this guilt that gets thrust upon white people who are historically perceived to have privilege, and therefore, no, it can't possibly be the fault of ethnic minorities or migrants. It's this perception of unconscious bias. Therefore, it's easy. It's so easy and safe for Keir Starmer to take that safe route and not say we need to look after all communities. It's just all about the migrant communities. And you can't just lump everybody into this far right category when there are so many people who are genuinely concerned about the state of migration, which has clearly failed in the UK, and the state of integration. And that's not just also happening in the UK, Andrew. There are obvious concerns back here in Australia, but our leaders are so scared of being called racist that it's just easy for them to take the safe route, which is what we're seeing with Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I think that's correct. But Will, it's interesting. You know, you mentioned multiculturalism, and this is showing the absurdities, I think, now of it. Not only just in the fact that, you know, this idea that you could change a culture and you know, the people, the poor people whose culture you're changing won't object. When a prime minister usually wants to reach out to an ethnic group in this multicultural sort of world that's got issues or that feels excluded, or when he wants something from that community, he goes to their community or religious leaders to make them feel included. So given that this is a multi-ethnic riot sort of situation where a lot